So, in about the 1900s, there is this girl from India. Her name is Panita, or her nickname was Panita. And Panita was just gifted with a brilliant intellect. And she learned Sanskrit and memorized all the Hindu Vedas. She's just brilliant. And at 16, they declared her a master of wisdom. I just want to say, for our 16 years old out there, I don't know what's holding you guys back, but let's get on the ball. She was just this brilliant intellect, especially when it came to Hindu scriptures. And then she goes to England and gets an education actually in England and the United States. And she runs into Christians, and she reads the Gospels, and she's just moved by them. So she's actually converted to Christianity. And she got married, she had a child, she became a widow. But she goes back to India, and she belonged to this wealthy Brahmin class, the top class. But after her conversion, she really becomes like this Mother Teresa saint. And she spends her life actually trying to educate orphan children and fought for the equal rights of women. And the odd part, she really was this holy character. But the odd part is this. Many Hindus considered her a heretic for leaving Hinduism. And some Christians considered her a heretic because she wasn't converting the Hindus. She was spending her life actually caring for the poor and the widows. And she literally saved thousands of children's lives. And when they accused her of being, when some Christians accused her of being a heretic, I love her response. She says, well, she said, I'm spending my life trying to convert Christians to Christianity. And really teach people how to love. I mean, just brilliant. But this is the odd part, is that in her life, she said it was always Christ that was calling to her. It was Christ that was calling to her when she was studying the Vedic Sanskrit. It was Christ who she found in the Gospels. It's Christ who she found in the sacraments. It is Christ she found really in serving the poor in her life. And so for her, Christ was very, very real. And the ones, like the Christians who called her a heretic, they had no doubt that they were right. And it just reminds me, really, her story reminds me of the gospel in this sense. Christ comes and he appears to him, and he appears to him that he's very real. He's very real in the stranger, in the breaking of the bread. He is very real, and that's what she discovered. But a lot of her critics, who were supposed Christians, really just condemned her. And it seems that they're the ones who were mistaken. But they had no doubt. Or just another story. So I'm also just about to finish this book called The Warmth of Other Suns, which I don't know if anybody read. It's really kind of a hard book. Anybody else read it? Oh, just the holy people? It's a hard book, and this is shocking. It's actually kind of about the great migration of blacks from the Deep South. And even in the South, after they were freed under the Jim Crow laws, life was brutal for blacks. I actually did not know this part of American history, where, just for example, in 1957, there was this guy named Arlington High who published these two-page pamphlets promoting, in 1957, which is only 6 years before I was born, promoting this radical idea of equality between blacks and whites. And he also published names of white separatists who would frequent black houses of ill repute. And because of that, they took him to court and declared him insane. And he was separated from his 4 children and his wife and sentenced to lifelong imprisonment in an insane asylum because clearly he was insane if he wanted equality between blacks and whites. And what amazed me about this story is that think about the Deep South at this time period. The whites would have been Christian, and they had absolutely no doubt that Christ wanted this system in which it was completely legal to lynch somebody. There's a story of this kid who holds open a door to a white woman, and because he speaks to her in an inappropriate way, they deemed inappropriate, they skinned him alive. Life was brutal, and the Christians never bothered to see Christ in the blacks. And my point being is this: it's like the first reading from Acts, where Peter, he's preaching to the religious. And here's the odd part. He wants the religious to have a deeper conversion. And he basically says, you don't know, you are ignorant, you don't know, you can't name the author of life, you can't name what gives life and gives death. And yet you call yourself religious. And I only mention this because it's in this time period where we religious, we want a deeper conversion, to really see Christ in other people, more in the sacraments, more everywhere, more real everywhere. And the danger sometimes if you think that you're a Christian, so you have all the answers. Maybe we're the ones who need a deeper conversion. Even last week, I mean, that was a story from the 1920s, 1957. Last week, there was a nun who I don't doubt that, she's a good person. But she was at this conference here at Holy Apostles, and she basically said, if anybody's doing yoga, it's opening your minds up to evil spirits. Now, I want to challenge this nun. I'm not saying she's a bad person, but I want to challenge her theology, because I think she's doing her theology out of fear, which is never good. Because when I was a missionary, I lived with a short time with these two Indian priests who, I'm really the boy from Idaho, and I get up and they're in the living room doing yoga, and they would do yoga and then say their breviary, which, I've never seen that before. So I said, well, that's different. And they said, no. They said, priests in India have been doing yoga and their morning prayer, you're saying the breviary, for hundreds of years. And these priests were really amazing. They're great people, joyful, loved serving God. And it says in the Bible, Christ says, judge things by their fruits. Clearly, doing yoga and their morning prayer has produced a lot of good fruits of great priests. So for hundreds of years, priests in India have done this, Catholic priests. And for this nun to say, if you're doing yoga, it opens yourself up to evil spirits, where's her evidence? And just because something's new and different to her does not make it evil. The point being is that maybe she shouldn't fear. That's my only point. And before you condemn all these people of having their minds, you should have some evidence. And maybe they're not evil people. Maybe really you're the one who just can't see Christ in these, no offense, Indian Catholic priests, just because it's different than you. And Peter, in his letter, is begging that the religious people have a deeper conversion. In the gospel, Christ always appears on a Sunday when they gather together, and he keeps appearing. But people can't recognize him. They think he's the gardener, or they think he's just a stranger. And Christ is trying to say that he's truly present, in the sense that it's us who have to learn how to recognize his presence more and more. During the 50 days of Easter, we're the ones who are supposed to see Christ as very real. We're the ones looking for a deeper conversion. And he says some things like, he speaks to him, he says, touch me. You can see me, touch me. And then he says, do you have anything to eat? he's basically hitting all our senses. You can touch, you can taste him, you can see him. The presence of Christ is very real around us. We're the ones who are missing it. And he says, I am not a ghost. But a lot of people just think of Christ as just kind of this idea out there. What if Christ was actually truly present in all the ways which Pandita found? In other people, in the poor, in the breaking of the bread. What if Christ is very real next to us? And we're the ones lacking the deeper conversion. And so, you know in the gospel where Christ says he opened their minds to the breaking of the bread, and then he'll say he opened their minds to Scripture. The Hebrew word that he's getting to it's just because you should learn some Hebrew, yada. And yada means to know, but it's a difference. Yada means to know like intimately and loving. It first happens in Genesis where it says Adam and Eve knew each other, yada. The apostles, they spent 3 years with Jesus. They knew his stories, they knew, all that, but that's just factual stuff. And yet when he appears, they can't recognize him. They can't recognize him in Scripture. They can't recognize him in the breaking of the bread. So he has to open their minds and teach them the real presence. That's what yada means. And what we're hoping is the same for us. I'm sure most of you guys know Scripture. We as Catholics go through the entire Bible. Not that script, about 90% of the Bible every 3 years. So most of you people have gone through it several times, so you probably know the stories. But if you know yada, this intimacy, you see Christ in other people, in the sacraments, in all around us, in Scripture. That's the conversion that we're begging for during Easter. And my last point is this. I actually think doubt and faith are very close friends. That, like for the Southerners that saw no problem in lynching the blacks, or the people calling Panita a heretic, they had no doubt whatsoever. Maybe a little bit of doubt, saying to yourself, maybe I'm the one that needs a deeper conversion. Maybe doubt and faith are good friends. If you have no doubt about any of your positions, then all you really need is for me to stand up here and lecture you what you're supposed to do. But you'll gain knowledge. You won't gain yada, this intimacy. We're the ones who this Sunday, like Christ was trying to teach the apostles, we're the ones who don't want to learn more facts. We want to be converted more to find Christ really present all around us.